Please help me reach 1,000 subscribers. The papers lie scattered across the table, their contents heavy with unspoken consequences. A man stands before Terry, his voice carrying an air of finality as he instructs her to read them. He informs her with cold detachment that Lawrence has already been registered in the family. There is no longer any need for her to remain. But before reaching this moment, the household had been in utter chaos just days ago. The sound of an enraged voice echoes through the halls. Terry's half-brother, though she never acknowledges him as such, bellows in frustration, accusing her of stealing his snacks yet again. Unbothered, Terry lounges on the sturdy branch of a large tree in the estate's vast garden, completely at ease. Her half-brother storms outside, demanding to know where she has gone, his anger palpable. She simply clicks her tongue in amusement, remarking that he acts as if it's the end of the world. Beside her, perched in the tree's embrace, sits a boy with an air of mischief about him. He eyes her with an exasperated fondness, pointing out that she has a truly disastrous way with words. Terry, ever sharp-tongued, smirks and reminds him that he is the very one who taught her to speak like this in the first place. Tommy, as he is called, does not argue. Instead, he lifts slightly off the branch, his body hovering in midair, a sight that would unnerve most but not Terry. Tommy is no ordinary boy. He is a ghost, and the only true companion she has ever had within the mansion's walls. He has been with her since the moment she was born, an unwavering presence in her lonely world. Unlike others, she has always been able to see ghosts. Not just see them but touch them. She once tried to tell her mother about the spirits surrounding them, though she no longer remembers this herself. It was her mother who recounted the story to her back when she was still alive. Terry's mother had been the wisest, kindest, and most beautiful person in the world. But now she is gone. And before Terry could even mourn her loss, her so-called father brought his mistress and their illegitimate son into the house. As if losing her mother were not enough, she had to endure the cruelty of this new family. Lawrence, the boy who now bears the title of her half-brother, took every opportunity to torment her. She grew accustomed to their cold stares, to their whispered mockery, but she refused to crumble under their gaze. With Tommy's presence and the occasional kindness of the mansion's other ghosts, Terry survived just fine among them. Yes, thank you very much. After everything she has endured, there is no way she will be frightened by Lawrence's petty threats. Not now, not ever. Unable to locate her, Lawrence resorts to the one thing he knows best, tattling. He runs off to inform their father. Terry, meanwhile, remains perfectly unbothered. In fact, she is rather pleased. This means she can go see her mother in secret. She and Tommy make their way to where her mother's portrait is kept. Tommy admires the painting, commenting on how wonderful her mom had been. Terry agrees, her voice carrying a quiet sorrow. The portrait, however, has gathered dust. Feeling the weight of longing settle in her chest, she misses her mother more than words can convey. But before she can dwell in that sentiment for too long, Lawrence's voice rings out from the hallway. He knows she is there. His arrogance grates against her nerves, but she quickly decides it is best to leave before he catches them. She signals Tommy to sneak out with her. Unfortunately, she is not fast enough. Lawrence bursts into the room, fury etched across his face. He demands to know where she thinks she is going and orders her to apologize to him at once. But her expression, calm, indifferent, wholly unimpressed, only infuriates him further. His voice rises as he sneers at her, claiming there is only so much pity their family can spare for her. He starts to boast, recounting how his father had saved her grandfather from ruin. He speaks of how, in return, her grandfather had begged his father to marry her mother. And then, with a cruel smirk, he declares that her mother got exactly what she deserved for being ungrateful and fighting back. Terry's blood runs cold. Her anger flares, sharp and unyielding. Her voice, laced with venom, demands to know what filth he has just spewed. Without hesitation, she tells him to shut his mouth. Just because he has one does not mean he can say whatever he pleases. Lawrence's temper snaps. His hand lifts, ready to strike her. Terry braces herself, half welcoming the impact. If he dares to hit her, she will have every reason to return the favor. But before the blow can land, Tommy intervenes. The ghost pushes Lawrence with an unseen force, sending him tumbling down the grand staircase. The commotion draws immediate attention. Their father, his mistress, and the household staff rush to the scene, their eyes widening as they witness Lawrence's fall. Her father wastes no time. He orders someone to fetch a doctor at once. Terry remains where she stands, her gaze meeting her father's. In that moment she knows she is doomed. Her punishment is swift and merciless. They feed her scraps, barely enough to sustain her. A calculated cruelty designed to remind her of her place. Tommy, ever worried, asks if she is still angry. She only shrugs. What's done is done. She is used to it by now. On paper, she remains the rightful heir to the Aberdeen Viscounty. Her father only holds the title because he married her mother. Without her, Lawrence cannot be legitimized. Without a rightful heir, the neighboring nobles would waste no time tearing the Viscounty apart. They cannot simply throw her away. Or so she believes. That is until she hears the truth. They are sending her away. Not just anywhere. They are sending her to the Ghost Duke's house, Aberdeen. 5 years ago, the Emperor of the Cream Kingdom sent Duke Aberdeen to the battlefield, intending to suppress him. However, with each victory, the reputation of the Aberdeen family only grew stronger. This displeased the Emperor, who issued an order, one that would place Duke Aberdeen in an impossible position. The command was to exterminate the Morsa clan. The Morsa clan was known as the Guides of the Dead, those who ensured that wandering spirits found their final rest. Yet the Emperor accused them of using wicked spirits to harm the living. This accusation, however, was nothing more than a ploy, a carefully crafted scheme designed to corner Duke Aberdeen. The very thought of slaughtering those who could communicate with the dead felt unsettling. Yet, defying a direct imperial order was tantamount to treason. Thus, the Duke and his knights silently raised their swords. Countless innocent lives were lost that day. The last surviving leader of the Morsa clan, standing amidst the ruins of his people, cast a terrible curse upon Duke Aberdeen. With his final breath, he condemned the Duke, vowing that the peace he had shattered would never return to him. The honor that Aberdeen had once held high would be trampled into the ground. The wealth that surrounded him would turn to dust. The eyes that once admired him would now only look upon him with fear and horror. He would neither live nor die but exist in eternal agony. Yet, in the face of this curse, Duke Aberdeen did not flinch. He and his knights returned to their estate, believing that they had emerged unscathed. However, the consequences of their actions soon became apparent. From that day forward, everyone within the Aberdeen estate, including the Duke himself, they had turned into ghosts. Their hearts still beat, yet their forms became invisible to the living. Though they could still grasp objects, wear clothes, and communicate with one another, to outsiders, they were nothing more than drifting garments, floating objects, mere apparitions. In time, even venturing beyond the estate became impossible. They attempted to hire people to act on their behalf, but every servant and messenger who set foot on their land fled in terror. Rumors surrounding the House of Aberdeen grew more malicious with each passing day. Their prestige crumbled, their territory fell into disarray, and even the gold that once filled their coffers began to dwindle. The same people who once sang praises of Duke Aberdeen now whispered behind his back, mocking him. He became known as the Living Ghost, and the estate that had once been the symbol of his power was now referred to as the Ghostly Duchy. Following this tragedy, the Emperor, as though bestowing a great favor, declared an end to the long decade of war. Whatever his true intentions may have been, Duke Aberdeen expressed his gratitude for the imperial grace in a letter before retreating into complete seclusion. Before isolating himself entirely, he left behind one final request. If there was a child from a noble family who could be adopted as his heir, the House of Aberdeen would take them in. However, due to the ominous rumors that surrounded the estate, no parent was willing to send their child. And so, 5 years passed. In the grand estate of the Aberdeen family, Terry sits before her father, who gazes at her with expectation. He asks if she is aware that Duke Aberdeen is still searching for an heir. Terry scoffs at the thought. Her father truly believes she would be scared simply because Aberdeen is a ghost, then he knows nothing about her. Yet, despite her bravado, she hesitates. Leaving the mansion filled with her mother's memories is something she cannot bear. She would rather die than leave. Her father, however, merely chuckles at her defiance. If she insists on being stubborn, he informs her, then he will have no choice but to dig up her mother's grave and toss her remains into the fields. Not only that, but he will also remove her mother's portrait from the family's gallery. This man needs a beating. A painting of someone who died from illness, after all, is an ominous thing to display, he adds. Terry's anger flares. Does he truly believe she will allow him to do such things? Her father, unimpressed, scoffs at her. What can an 8-year-old child possibly do? Do you think throwing a tantrum will help you against the hounds raised by the Aberdeen family? It is frustrating, but Terry knows he is right. She is just a child. There is nothing she can do. Nothing at all. Even the ghosts bound to the mansion, those who have always been on her side, are powerless to help her now. Her father smirks, seeing the realization dawn upon her. He informs her that they will be leaving tomorrow morning. If she does not want to make matters worse for herself, she must be ready and leave quietly. As he walks away, Terry's mind races. The weight of reality crashes down upon her. She cannot believe it. She is truly being forced to leave, not only her home but also the ghosts who have stood by her for as long as she can remember. A bitter laugh escapes her lips. If this is how things are going to be, then she will make history. She will become the fastest disowned child the Empire has ever seen. Meanwhile, in the eerie silence of Aberdeen Estate, Duke Aberdeen studies the document before him. His eyes narrow slightly as he reads the name. Terry, the youngest child of the Aberdeen family, and she is only 8 years old. He exhales slowly and rises from his seat, stepping toward a large, dust-covered mirror. Pulling away the cloth that conceals it, he gazes at his own reflection. He wonders, will the child burst into tears at the mere sight of him? Will a girl so young be able to endure life in this den of monsters? A flicker of amusement crosses his features as he contemplates it. But amusement is fleeting. His estate must be protected. That is his duty. No matter how sorry he feels for this child, he has no other choice. Turning away from the mirror, he calls for his butler. Sebastian appears immediately, bowing his head in deference. The Duke instructs him to personally retrieve the girl. Sebastian nods in understanding. Without hesitation, he assures his master that he will go at once and bring Terry to the Aberdeen estate. And, of course, he will ensure that she does not terrify too easily. Terry is leaving and Tommy is a mess. Tears stream down his face the moment he hears the news that she is being adopted by the Aberdeen family. He sniffles and wails, utterly inconsolable, until Terry, ever composed, wipes his tears away with the air of someone who has long accepted the unfairness of life. She tells him not to cry. After all, do you really want to send me off with such a pitiful expression? Tommy sniffs, hiccups, and assures her with great conviction that he will protect his mother, his mentor, and, he pauses dramatically. Even if I cannot go to the garage, I will make absolutely certain that no one touches her portrait. This is exactly what Terry was about to ask. She nods in approval, patting him on the shoulder with all the trust and confidence of a general handing over the last defense of a crumbling fortress. Then, from outside, a voice calls her name, announcing that the carriage from the Aberdeen Duchy has arrived to take her away. She straightens up, takes one last look at Tommy and tells him she will return. And in the meantime, she adds, even if you miss me, you must not miss me. Tommy stares at her, utterly confused, eyes red from crying as he tries to decipher what on earth she means. But Terry does not elaborate. Instead, she walks off with the air of someone who has just delivered a prophecy, leaving Tommy drowning in riddles. Outside, her father is already making a show of urgency. He is chiding the servants, telling them to hurry. But the moment his eyes land on Terry, his expression twists. Just yesterday, he had been going on about how he couldn't possibly send her to the duchy looking like a beggar, as if she were nothing more than a piece of merchandise to be auctioned off. He had even personally picked out a dress for her and forced her into a bath, as if scrubbing off a few layers of dirt could erase years of his own neglect. Terry scoffs. Did he really think dressing her up like this would make any difference? But of course, the moment he heard that the total travel expense would be a jaw-dropping 450,000 gold, he had nearly choked on his own breath. Watching him reluctantly hand over the money had been nothing short of hilarious. Sebastian, the butler assigned to accompany her, steps forward and presents a piece of paper with all the seriousness of a royal decree. Written on it, in rather stiff handwriting, is the declaration that he is Sebastian and he will be serving her. He announces that he will check the carriage, leaving Terry with a short moment to bid farewell to her family. Terry thinks to herself that Sebastian looks like he's only barely alive. Perhaps he too has resigned himself to the absurdity of it all. Then, her father approaches, lowering his voice just enough to sound threatening while still maintaining the illusion of fatherly concern. He tells her that for her mother's sake she would do well to stay quiet. If you behave, he adds, you might even get to live a luxurious life beyond anything she has ever known. Terry gulps. Is he threatening her? Of course he is. He is vile to the very end. But she is not about to let him have the last word. With a bright, almost too cheerful smile, she tells him about a dream she had last night. In this dream, her grandfather had appeared to her. She then sweetly asks her father to bow before her grandfather's portrait. Her father, suspicious but intrigued, leans in, wanting to know what this dream grandfather had said to her. Terry's eyes gleam as she loudly declares for all to hear that her grandfather had scolded her father for stealing the inheritance, only to squander it all on gambling. And if this nonsense continues, the old man will take back the gold bars that her father has been secretly hoarding. Her father's face turns the color of spoiled milk. His hands clamp over her mouth in sheer panic as he pleads with her to stop talking. Terry, of course, has no intention of stopping. She is thrilled to see the absolute distress on his face. In fact, she knows exactly where he has hidden those gold bars. If word got out, he would be too paranoid to even sleep at night, constantly fearing thieves lurking in the shadows. And oh, the delicious chaos that would ensue if his beloved second wife found out about his secret stash. Up until now, she had held her tongue, keeping this knowledge to herself. But now everything is different. She wants to see how long that so-called love of the century will last once the second wife realizes her dear husband has been holding out on her. As the carriage rattles away from her former home, Terry leans out of the window with an infuriatingly sweet smile and calls out to her father, telling him to send her regards to her stepmother. Her father looks like he just swallowed a lemon whole. Perfect. The Krem Empire, vast and diverse, has a warm climate in the west and an unforgivingly cold one in the east. And, of course, it is in the freezing east that the Aberdeen Duchy is located, one of the coldest regions in the entire empire. Sebastian, ever the responsible servant, had wanted to prepare new clothes for Terry, knowing that she would freeze to death otherwise. However, due to the duchy's financial problems, which, based on his tight-lipped expression, must be dire, this was the best he could manage. With a solemn expression, he had handed her a pink dress. A cute, fluffy, innocent-looking pink dress. Terry had stared at it, momentarily thrown off, but then she shrugged. It was a little big, but honestly, it was leagues better than anything she had back home. However, the moment she started to feel even a tiny bit of sympathy for Aberdeen's financial struggles, she ruthlessly shut it down. Absolutely not. She was not here to sympathize. She was here to be a menace. Declaring aloud in the most spoiled tone she could muster, she had proclaimed that although the quality was terrible, she supposed she had no choice but to wear it if she didn't want to freeze to death. Yes, she had already made up her mind. She would be the fastest, most uniquely abandoned adoptee in the entire empire. If she acted like a child who only played around, they would start to worry that their already bleak future would completely collapse. And if she added a touch of social scandal? Even better. And so, in the present, she is now fighting a battle far greater than any she has faced before. Putting on the dress. No matter how much she struggles, the traitorous thing refuses to cooperate. After watching her flail around for a considerable amount of time, Sebastian finally asks if he can help. Terry, still clinging to whatever remains of her dignity, refuses. She can do it. 5 minutes later, she is forced to accept defeat. With great reluctance, she asks for help, and Sebastian assists her without a word. Once he finishes adjusting the sleeves, he takes a step back and laughs. Yes, laughs. Terry blinks. Is he actually laughing at her? She narrows her eyes. Does he think she can't see him? In reality, she sees everything. But she lets it slide for now. When they finally arrive at the castle, Sebastian, ever the gentleman, offers his hand to help her down. However, following the plan, Terry insists that she can manage on her own. She hops down from the carriage, full of confidence, only to land slightly off balance. But she recovers gracefully. Thank you very much. Then she sees it. The castle. Her mouth nearly falls open. It looks like a den of ghosts. Now, ordinary people can't usually see ghosts. However, when there are this many, even people who aren't particularly sensitive to the supernatural would feel uneasy. But Terry? Terry doesn't care. What? Because right now, she is a spoiled, ignorant brat and she does not believe in ghosts. Even if they are currently standing right in front of her. Meanwhile, the people of Aberdeen Duchy seem completely unaware that their home is basically a haunted house. Sebastian steps forward and knocks on the massive doors. When the Duke of Aberdeen answers, Sebastian announces, with all the formality of a royal proclamation, that he has brought Terry. A voice from within grants them permission to enter. Terry steps inside, and freezes. Her eyes go wide. Because sitting before her is the Duke of Aberdeen himself. And he is, without a doubt, unreasonably handsome. Terry blinks twice. Then she snaps herself out of it. She cannot believe what she just thought. This is the first time in her life she has ever seen someone prettier than her mother. That realization alone is enough to make her scowl at herself. What in the world is wrong with her? Why is she staring at this man like that? She needs to get a grip. Shaking her head, she finally acknowledges the man before her. Aberdeen. He nods at her, then presents a formal document stating that he is glad to see her and hopes they will get along well. Terry narrows her eyes. Are there still adults like him left in the world? He is being polite, maybe even considerate. But does he have any idea what he is getting himself into? She highly doubts it. Does he truly believe he can handle what she is about to do in the name of getting herself kicked out of here? Still, she finally speaks. She tells him that her father promised she would get to eat lots of delicious food and wear plenty of cute clothes if she agreed to come here. She then tilts her head, looking at him expectantly, and asks if that's true. Aberdeen listens without reacting much, and that, more than anything, irks her. Shouldn't he be at least a little bit frustrated? Given the financial situation of this household, bringing in such a luxurious child like her must be a complete nightmare. But no. He doesn't even look remotely annoyed. Instead, he simply responds saying that he doesn't know if he will be able to meet all of her expectations, but he will try his best as her guardian. He even adds rather casually that if she is all right with it, he would like to call her by her name. Then, as if realizing that might be too informal, he politely asks what name she would prefer. For a moment, Terry hesitates. Then she shrugs and tells him that he can call her Terry. Aberdeen thanks her for allowing him to use her name. But Terry barely hears him. Her mind is stuck on a single realization. No one, no living person, has called her Terry since her mother passed away. The dupe doesn't count. The man is practically half a ghost. The thought makes her flinch. Aberdeen notices immediately and frowns, worried that he has startled her somehow, but Terry isn't even focused on him anymore. She has drifted into her own thoughts, distracted by the weight of the past, until she snaps herself out of it. By now, Aberdeen has turned his attention elsewhere. He is diligently writing something down. She watches for a moment before he looks up again, informing her that she must be tired from her journey and should get some rest. Without much ceremony, he turns to Sebastian, instructing him to take Terry to her room. Then, in a rare show of appreciation, he even commends Sebastian for his efforts today. Sebastian, ever the obedient one, complies. He extends his hand towards Terry. She looks at it for a moment, then, with the grace of someone entirely unbothered, places her hand in his. Together they leave. Once they arrive at her room, a maid is waiting for them. The maid, introducing herself as Mina, is practically buzzing with energy. The second she sees Terry yawn, she immediately exclaims that Terry must be exhausted from her journey and asks if she would like to rest. Terry of course insists that she is fine. Mina, as it turns out, does not care about Terry's opinion. Excitedly, she announces that she will help Terry get ready for bed. Terry tries to resist. Oh, she fights, but it is all in vain. Mina is unstoppable. Before she knows it, Terry is dressed for sleep and tucked neatly into bed, as if she were some delicate little doll lying stiffly under the covers. Terry stares at the ceiling. Is it really okay for her to just do nothing? Who even sleeps this early? It feels ridiculous. But as she contemplates her next move, Mina hands her a small, soft toy, a teddy bear, and wishes her sweet dreams before leaving the room. Terry barely has time to process before sleep creeps in. In her dream, she is in an unfamiliar place. Then she sees her mother. For a moment, she wants to run to her, but her mother is far away. Too far. Before she can do anything, she wakes up. It has been a while since she last dreamed of her mother. Sitting up in bed, Terry rubs her eyes, then frowns. Enough lying around. She needs to find a good place to hide from her lessons. The sooner she stirs up trouble, the sooner she can go home. Slipping out of her bed, she moves quietly through the dim halls. The darkness does not bother her in the slightest. As she walks, she even spots a ghostly beggar in the distance. But, well, that's not her problem. She continues on her way. Then, bam. She bumps into something. Or rather, someone. A ghost boy. For a second, she just stares at him. But then her gaze shifts and she notices something on the floor, her teddy bear. She is absolutely certain that this is the same bear Mina gave her. But why is it here? She hesitates. Should she pick it up? Maybe she is just imagining things. Still, she eventually decides to take it with her. Carrying it back to her room, she places the bear on her table and turns to leave again. This time she finds the perfect tree to hide in. Standing before it, she tells the tree, quite seriously, that it better be obedient and become her perfect hiding spot. Then, another sound. She whirls around. It's the teddy bear. Again. Terry's eye twitches. Without thinking, she swings at the bear, which apparently is a mistake because the bear gets up. And then it yells. What the hell do you think you're doing? Terry just stares. This thing just spoke. Okay. Maybe this place is going to be more interesting than she thought. Terry is taken aback as she watches the teddy bear talk, her eyes widening in disbelief. As if that isn't enough, she suddenly becomes aware of the countless ghostly figures surrounding her, all staring at her intently. Meanwhile, in Aberdeen's office, he asks Mina about Terry's whereabouts. Mina quickly informs him that she fell asleep as soon as she got to her room, remarking that she must be utterly exhausted. But then Mina adds an observation that catches Aberdeen's attention. Terry doesn't seem like someone who has enjoyed a life of luxury. Aberdeen, puzzled, asks her what she means by that. Mina elaborates, explaining that Terry was surprisingly reluctant to accept help, which is unusual for someone from a noble family. Considering that the Olin family is in a much better financial position than their own, it doesn't make sense for Terry to behave this way. She points out that Terry is smaller than other children her age and wears clothes that don't even fit her properly. Sebastian, who has been listening silently, finally speaks up. He notes that while the Viscount has always claimed to be taking care of both children equally, reality seems to tell a different story. There must be a reason why the Viscount sent Terry to them so suddenly. He admits that, due to the urgency of the situation, he failed to investigate properly. Aberdeen, however, is more concerned about something else: Terry's bright and cheerful smile. Could it be that her happiness is merely a facade? The thought irritates him. Just what kind of mistreatment did she suffer at her own home? Determined to get to the bottom of this, Aberdeen instructs Sebastian to send someone to investigate the Olin family situation and Terry's life there. In the meantime, he orders Mina to help Terry adjust to her new surroundings. But before they can discuss further, a loud and unsettling noise echoes through the mansion. Aberdeen instantly knows that it must have come from Terry's room. Without wasting a second, he rushes toward her room, his heart pounding with concern. But when he arrives, he finds her sound asleep. He sighs, assuming that she must have been sleep-talking. Carefully, he pulls the blanket over her and leaves the room. However, as soon as he steps away, Terry's eyes snap open. She can't believe that Aberdeen came running so quickly. But that's not the most pressing issue right now. No, what truly occupies her thoughts is the teddy bear she saw in the garden. How could it move? Was that even possible? Had she finally lost her mind? As she tries to process this, she suddenly hears something, an unmistakable voice. The teddy bear behind her speaks again, telling her not to say such things. Terry freezes. Wait, what? Her mind is reeling as she slowly turns around, her eyes landing on the bear once more. The first thing she does is stare at it, just to confirm that she isn't imagining things. Then, as if deciding that complete denial is the best course of action, she picks up the bear and praises it for coming all the way to her by itself. Yes, that must be it. A very intelligent teddy bear. She declares that her teddy is as smart as she is, which is obviously very smart. And then, she gently tries to put it back to sleep. As if that will make all of this nonsense go away. Unfortunately, the teddy bear, who is clearly very much awake and very much not normal, resists. It outright refuses to go along with this charade, bluntly telling her that she doesn't need to pretend that she can't hear him. But Terry, being Terry, simply continues to fake sleep, and even starts snoring for added effect. The teddy bear, unamused, finally issues a threat. If she keeps acting like this, he will tell all the ghosts in the mansion that she can actually see them. That, of course, immediately gets her attention. Terry shoots up in bed, furious. What the hell is this thing? A ghost? Why is it following her? And most importantly, is it planning on haunting her forever? She is fully prepared to rip its tiny eyes out if it dares to lie to her. The teddy bear, completely unfazed by her threats, calmly adjusts its little collar and introduces itself as Rick. He thinks, though he isn't entirely sure, that he might be a ghost. Terry raises an eyebrow. So he's like, the spirit of a teddy bear or something? Rick scoffs. He doesn't remember anything before entering this teddy bear. All he knows is that his name is Rick. He has no memory of how he died or why he ended up trapped inside a stuffed toy. He has tried to leave like other ghosts, but for some reason he can't find his way out. Hearing this, Terry actually feels a little bad about threatening him. But that doesn't mean she's about to let him off the hook. Rick still hasn't answered the most important question. Why is he following her? Rick hesitates for a moment, glancing around as if making sure no one else is listening. Then he explains that recently, an evil spirit entered the mansion. He mocks Terry, calling her an ignorant child who was wandering around late at night. What was he supposed to do? Just sit there and watch? Terry glares at him. First of all, he is not a person, so he can stop acting like one. Rick, of course, had only intended to scare her a little so she'd go back to her room. Terry, offended beyond words, demands to know his age. Rick, dripping with sarcasm, asks, "What's the point of that question when I've already told you I have no memories?" Fine. Terry changes her approach. How long has he been here? Rick isn't sure, but he thinks it's been over 4 years. Terry immediately perks up at this information. If that's the case, then that makes her his older sister. Rick stares at her, utterly unimpressed. Does this even matter? No. Of course not. Terry admits it. But there's something even more important at hand. She demands to know the location of this so-called evil spirit. Rick explains that evil spirits are dangerous, not just to the living but also to the dead. They consume weaker ghosts to grow in power and size. And once strong enough, they can either steal life from the living or even take over their bodies. There are 2 ways a spirit turns into an evil ghost. First, when a ghost holds on to resentment from their life and continues to harm the living. Second, when a ghost steals the life of a living person. Hearing this, Terry immediately recognizes that the second case is far more dangerous. She turns her gaze toward Rick, deep in thought. There's no way that this time, it's the second case. If you find this story helpful, subscribe so I can create part 2. Thank you.